Assalamualaikum, my name is Ainu Masrura binti Hatama. Today I would like to present about inflation in Malaysia. Inflation is quantitative measure of the rate at which an economist's average price level for a basket of selected goods and services rise over time. Okay, the overall level of pricing is continually rising and a unit of currency now by less than it did previously. Okay, inflation is the rate at which the overall level of price for goods and services rise, leading the buying power of a currency to decline. Okay, the consumer price index (CPI) and the wholesale price index (WPI) are the two most widely used inflation indicators. Okay, inflation can be seen positively or badly depending on one's perspective. Okay, now inflation is assessed in a variety of ways based on the sort of product and services involved, and it is the inverse of deflation, which is defined as a general decrease in price of goods and services when the inflation rate goes below 0%. Okay, we have a five issue. Okay, the first issue, balance of payments. Okay, domestic inflation promotes import spending because imports appear to be cheaper and dampens export sales because exports appear to be more expensive overseas. Thus, the balance of payments may worsen. Okay, the next issue is a investment. Okay, inflation has a negative impact of business. Okay, for a variety of reasons. Okay, to begin with, inflation reduces aggregate demands by undermining consumers' confidence and expenditure. Okay, the third issue is unemployment. Okay, now we all know inflation influence on cost might result in job losses. Firms may replace other elements such as new technology for labor when costs grow. Okay, the fourth issue is price mechanism. Okay, the price mechanism cannot efficiently fulfill its function as a resource allocating mechanism. When average price increase, market function better as price rise and fall, providing information about relative value. But if average price continue to rise, with rises outnumbering declines, capital contribution becomes skewed. Okay, the last issue is money illusion. Okay, when people make illogical judgment as a result of rising price, this is known as money illusion, also known as inflation illusion. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Syaira binti Muhammad Yusa. I would like to present theory and application theory. What is Consumer Price Index (CPI)? The CPI is measure of the overall price level in an economy. The Consumer Price Index is the CPI includes a package of goods and services commonly purchased. So, how CPI is used? It is a measure of the end user's inflation. The purchasing power of the dollar can be determined in order to account for price change in other economic indicators. Furthermore, it provides wage earner and social security reception with cost of living adjustment and prevent tax rates from increasing due to inflation. A rise in the price level indicates that a given economic currency is losing purchasing power. Inflation is most frequently calculated by price change. Change in the Consumer Price Index (CPI) are commonly used as a proxy for inflation. There are two policies used by the government. First is fiscal policy and monetary policy. First, fiscal policy. Refer to the government budgetary policy which entitled the government directing the economy level of spending and tax rate. It is monetary policy sister tactic. Second, monetary policy is an economic policy that manages the size and rate of growth of an economic money supply. It is an effective tool for controlling macroeconomic variables such as inflation and unemployment. These policies are implemented using various tools. First, interest rate adjustment. By changing the discount rate, and central bank can influence interest rate. Second, change reserve requirement. Central bank generally establish the minimum amount of reserve which a commercial bank has to hold. Third, open market operation. The central bank can either buy or sell government-issued security to influence the supply of money. Expansionary or contractionary monetary policy may be possible as an expansionary policy reduce unemployment and encourage businesses and consumer expenditure. The aim of contractionary and economic policy of contraction is to reduce the supply of money in the economy. According from the article from Hossein, provide that the central bank has the authority to conduct independent monetary policy for price stability, and the government remain committed to maintaining fiscal discipline. A rule-based monetary policy can ensure the price stability. Furthermore, it is expected that a rule-based monetary policy and elevated monetary policy credibility would make monetary policy more effective and also keep inflation low and stable.
Many causes have contributed to Malaysia's inflation in the last few years. These elements are either caused by economic consideration or by external forces that are unrelated to the economy. Economic consideration are further separated into monetary and non-monetary categories. The money supply is one of the economic factors that generated inflation in Malaysia within the monetary factors category. The first factor of inflation in Malaysia is because of exchange rate depreciation. The higher cost of imported items might also cause inflationary pressure. A devaluation of the ringgit, for example, will increase the cost of importing foreign goods. This causes inflation by exerting upward pressure on the general level of prices. Similarly, when the ringgit strengthens, domestic inflation will decrease as imports denominated in foreign currency become less expensive and more accessible. As a result, changes in the currency rates may affect local inflation rates. Next factor is imported goods and services. Imported commodities put pressure on the inflation. Imported commodities may cause general price level to rise, whereas interest rates are one element that influences inflation. The interest rate is on the rise and the exchange rate has an impact on the economy. The currency rate affects the imports of products and services. It is possible that it will have an impact on the stock market. It may have an effect on the general price level because of higher imported goods prices as reflected by high shipping costs. Imports products are heavily reliant on the manufacturing sector at the start of an industrialization program. Third factor is domestic demand. Domestic demand factor also played a significant role in inflation in the 1990s year. Domestic demand was extremely high as a result of rising income and employment growth. Property prices and equity rose significantly, supported by strong growth in domestic liquidity and credit amidst large capital inflows. Rentals prices steadily increased, forcing the gross rent, fuel and power category of the CPI to attain a 13-year high of 4.4% inflation rate in 1998. In Malaysia, inflation reached around 4% in 1991 to 1992. This is due to the Gulf War, which primarily featured Iraq and the United States, which prompted a spike in global oil prices. As a result of the increase in global oil prices, Malaysia's inflation increased. The last factor is policy implications. Monetary policy must strike a balance between the need to sustain the economy, maintain a moderate inflation rate, and avoid generating incentives for excessive financial risk-taking. As a result, monetary policy has avoided setting extremely low interest rates for extended periods of time. Monetary policy, in particular, has avoided interest rates for extended period of time, negative real interest rates for extended periods, while brief negative real interest rates were accepted when inflation soared due to the transitory effects of various shocks. Low interest rates have a tendency to create various financial imbalances, particularly in a high-saving society like Malaysia.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Haza Fazira binti Roslan. My metric card is 201914391. Recovery of government inflations. Inflation is the economic system that is concerns many parties. Inflation is not only concerns of society, but also the government. To overcome this, find out the causes of the inflation. So the way the overcome is can be known. First, save of government expenses. Second, setting maximum price of some item. Third, raising tax rate. 4. Open market operation strategy. Save on government expenses. The government can restrict the purchase or demand for goods and service. The government can also limit the budget spent for various unnecessary purposes. Increase tax and reduce spending. This can improve the conditions of the state of national budget and help reduce demand in the economy. Setting maximum price of some item. To deal rising inflations, this must be maximum price for particular type of good. Inflation is the condition which the economy of the country tend to rise of the price of good and service for a long period of the time. Inflation causes by rising cost of production. Raw material price will increase production cost. Rising tax rates. Increased tax rates of the company and household will reduce the limits consumption level. Reduce the level of consumption will affect decline of the price of the good. Rising interest rate from the central bank at the higher rate make loan more expensive and saving will more attractive. Higher interest rate reduce consumer spending due the risk interest rate. Rising borrowing costs will discourage consumer from borrowing and spending. Open market operating strategy. High demand of good will make the price of good increase. If the demand of the good increase, which are not accompanied by the increase of number of the good, it will be shortage of the good. Lack of the good as easy demand make the price rise. The government must issue regulations by increase the amount of the productions. This can be made by provide subsidy to the company that can meet the demand.
Here we examine some of the effects of inflation to household, company, government, and abroad. For household, inflation can increase the current year's general price of goods and services over the previous year. Inflation also will inevitably reduce purchasing power. The depreciation of national currency aggravates inflationary pressures. Imported goods will be more expensive. Manufacturers will seize the opportunity to pass on the cost of imported components, including raw materials, to the consumer country and can cause the rising of price. As for the company, export earning will fall as a result of the loss of competitiveness. Inflation can disrupt business planning, however, it can reduce unemployment. Inflation will also have an impact on domestic investment. The production of exported goods and services may lose competitiveness as prices rise. Export earning will fall as a result of the loss of competitiveness, which will reduce investment in industry. Overseas firms with a larger market and cutting-edge technology that can produce goods at lower prices will dominate the global market.
As a result, local firms that experience inflation will lose competitiveness with foreign firms. Despite of it, companies have to follow the current situation and it will disrupt the business planning that should be done at the time. For the government, it can surplus of the money of the public to spend or invest. Increased economic growth and higher inflation may harm the economy. Lowering tax, according to logic, will result in a surplus of money for the public to spend or invest. As a result of this situation, demand will rise. Business will require more employees to meet demand and job opportunities will expand, lead to lowering the unemployment rate. When the majority of people are employed or unemployment falls, the salary money earned drive purchases and spending. This money flow cycle is desired by all governments. Aside from tax cuts, the government can boost the economy by increasing spending. However, there is a negative effect if the salary increase dramatically, as inflation will rise as well. When this occurs, it is extremely difficult to return the country economy to normality. Following that, the country economy will contract. Further abroad, energy and international commodity price will rise as inflationary pressures rise. Higher interest rate encourage investment because people will see a better return on their investment with higher interest rate. The uncertain about future inflation, which can reduce both investment and saving, rapid depreciation of real money and other financial items, and high inflation, which can lead the shortage of goods as consumers begin to stockpile goods in anticipation of rising.
Okay, let's continue to the conclusion for this assignment. We can draw based on the above discussion is inflation is the rate at which the price of good and service is given economy rise. Inflation occur when price rise as manufacturing expenses such as raw material wage rise. There are variation issue resulting from the existing of inflation in a country that has been explained above, such as balance of payments, investment, unemployment, price mechanism, money illusion. By knowing the cause of inflation in the country, the measure to prevent and solve inflation will be known. Among the recovery ways for government inflation are such as saving on government expenses, setting maximum price for some item in the market, raising the tax rate, and lastly by opening the market operation strategy. There are several elements that will have impact or effect from inflation. Based on what was described earlier, we can see that household income is affected by it as the cost of good increase and the volume of wage decrease. Domestic investment affected by inflation as the domestic company is more unprofitable because they are foreign company that are able to dominate the global market and the domestic market with their cutting edge technology. Furthermore, the government is also affected by inflation as is related to the government money flow cycle, whether the cycle obtain a stable economy return or not. Lastly, inflation determines the economic growth of our country. Inflation has positive and negative effect on economic growth based on what has been described previously. Okay. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.